17 days till Trump gets in. I can tell you, Trump knows the danger. I'm going to stop right there. Trump knows the danger. Notice the Washington Post says Trump reading InfoWars will cause an economic collapse. No, raising interest rates will. Am I for zero interest rates? No. They only gave a zero interest rate to the big banks. Now we deserve some zero interest rates ourselves, not forever. And that's what Trump wants to do. So they're trying to raise them to stall him. The point is they're the ones involved trying to overthrow his election, admitting they are. And they still intend, after the electors failed and after the recount failed and after all the failures, they're going for broke and each time escalating. All they've got is a fake indictment and fake arrest and having some crazy federal officers go in there and try this, or loading a helicopter full of C4 and flying it into his home or Trump Tower, or an inauguration. But I'm telling you, intellectually, historically, my sources, but also gut level, and that's what I really go with, I've never, I mean, Spidey since, let's say, maybe has gotten to DEFCON 3. We're at DEFCON 1, folks, okay? You can, so Matt Bracken, I want to take a few calls in this hour and hand it over to you, but we have this clip of just last week. There's even more detailed clips the week before that, where you laid out and I laid out this whole scenario, and now we're seeing it. What do you make of the situation we're in right now?
Well, the story in the Washington Post, I think, is huge. You almost cannot or underestimate how the Washington Post is being used by a conduit. But I think that I'm actually a little bit optimistic because I think that they're still behind the curve. You know, they're still thinking that they're leading as the mainstream media, but they're actually trailing now. They're being outed so fast as fake news that their tricks aren't working. Like we said last week, once you see the wizard behind the curtain, you can't close the curtain and make us unsee it. We've seen the wizard. We know that the mainstream media is just feeding psyops, propaganda. You know, the polls are nothing but propaganda. Right before the election, Hillary up 12 points. Just propaganda, and it's not working. And when you see them trying to discredit Trump by associating him with InfoWars, it just shows how far behind the curve they really are. And they're stuck in the old paradigm, the paradigm that lost them the election. But that doesn't make them less dangerous.
I was about to say, yes, everything they do turns to crap. They have the opposite of a Midas touch. The problem is they're insane. They're still in power. They're escalating each threat continuum level. I see this. The math's very easy. It spells disaster. I mean, they're really going to go for broke.
Well, they're doubling down. It's the old General Honore doubling down on stupid. You know, they've got no other trick. The only trick that they've got is to attack the alt-right, you know, the conservative new media. But they're so far behind the curve, they don't realize they've already been left in the dust. They've become a laughingstock.
They are dinosaurs. I mean, Pelosi's like this. Reportedly, Hillary and everybody's falling apart. Pelosi is like someone in command now of the opposition with Soros, two doddering, insane people.
And Soros is definitely desperate. You know, Soros is seeing his entire castle crumbling before his eyes. And like Pelosi and some of the others, they're you know, multiple procedures to keep them from showing their real age.
So here's the next question. The week before Hitler committed suicide, he was giving orders to General Steiner, who had 1/10 the force Hitler thought he had, and was giving armies to, you know, orders to armies that were already destroyed. Have we reached that point where they're kind of just giving, like, they're giving orders to their legs, but we already cut their legs off? Or could they really try to start a war or something before they're removed? Because I know the intelligence agencies, I don't lionize them, but they are more awake than the average person, and they're really blocking what's happening.
Well, the intelligence agencies, but at the top, you know, Clapper and Brennan, I don't trust at all. As far as I'm concerned, they're moles. You know, as far as I'm concerned, they lean more towards traitor than patriot.
No, I totally agree. But so we know it was U.S. intelligence that leaked the info is what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that's their number one concern.
Well, in the next 3 weeks, we could definitely see something, you know, a true crisis, say, you know, a chemical attack in Israel, something like that. I would put nothing off of the table.
How big is it they're moving against Netanyahu? I mean, Obama wouldn't have moved against Netanyahu last week if he didn't have something he thought that was big, and now we know they're trying to indict and arrest Netanyahu. Police are at his house right now.
But it's so patently obvious. That's the thing. It's so obvious that this is Obama and Soros's desperation move. This is their going out the door, trying to, you know.
I totally agree. So what other moves do you think they have? Because you brought up the grid situation, and then it popped right out.
Yeah, and see, this is really important. This is why my first novel, Enemies Foreign and Domestic, begins with a false flag operation, and for the purpose of putting in people's minds that don't always believe, the obvious story that you see in the newspaper or on TV. There can be other reasons, other things behind it. We're now at the point where any kind of a partial grid collapse in this country, people wouldn't think that it was Russia doing it. They would think it was Obama doing it. And Brennan and Clapper and, the other Confederates that they have.
But they're so disconnected, as you just said, they may do it.
They may, but it's, there's going to be a new sheriff in town and the forensics will still be around.
Sure, so your gut's telling you that we've turned the tide then?
I hope so. That doesn't mean that they won't try something desperate.
No, but what's your gut tell you? Because, I mean...
My gut tells me that something, outrageous could happen in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's what my gut says.
But I don't know that if it's going to, I don't know it's going to stop the inauguration. And the worst actions that they take at this point, all of the forensics, the cyber forensics will be preserved. And when the new team comes in, people will be facing prison for any kind of,
well, I agree. There's been this thing, don't go after the last group and we'll leave you alone. Trump has to, just a part of duty, has to purge these people. I mean, thousands of people have to get indicted and go to prison, bare minimum.
Well, I like the fact that, if Jeff Sessions is indeed approved, I think that there are probably, dozens of nests of FBI agents with plenty of integrity. They've been keeping their private file all along.
Oh, yeah. The FBI in New York has all the pedophile stuff.
Yeah, well, not only the pedophile stuff, but I mean all of the pay to play for Hillary at the State Department. All of these things. They
tried to bribe them on tape. 3 different groups of FBI. They would bribe them on the spot, and they would say, the FBI would say, it came out in WikiLeaks, and in the congressional hearing, I mean, as you know, they'd say, this is illegal. And they go, no, we've been given authorization by the Secretary of State to make these offers of jobs if you'll drop this. I mean, talk about arrogance, Matt.
Well, just wait until the new regime is in power, and these FBI agents that were told to stand down, that have been, grinding their teeth for the last year and a half, but meanwhile they've been still continuing their investigations because that's what they do. These senior investigators, it's in their bone marrow. Telling them to stand down just makes them dig in harder, like trying to pull a bone away from a mad pit bull. You can order the pit bull to drop the bone, but he's just going to hide it. And, you're not going to take it away from him. And these investigators, I think that they're going to put files that are practically complete in front of Jeff Sessions. Then it'll be between DOJ and President Trump.
No, I agree. No, Trump is actually going to go after him. They know that. I don't know why Trump's in a double game then, acting conciliatory in public when he's planning to go after him when they already know.
Well, he has to act conciliatory in public because, you don't want to warn the person that is still got the nuclear football being carried around behind him. You don't want to overtly warn the guy in the open that, you might be facing prison time.
No, I agree,
so
but
nice.
They know it's bull.
I don't know. I mean, they've got to be desperate. Now, Obama, I think he could even leave the country. I mean, come to it. But I think a lot will be exposed. Remember, Trump was also, and this is where the mainstream media, they try to discredit all of these, along with, say, Pizzagate, things like that. Find one false allegation in 1,000 Reddit replies and discredit the entire actual conspiracy. But Trump never did believe the Obama background fiction. Personally, I think he was born in Hawaii, but just his father was probably Frank Marshall Davis.
That's 100%.
That wrote the book and made the movie.
It's 100%. It's his photos of him in the same couch, same house. It's in his book. His grandfather was CIA. They admitted Davis was, quote, like his dad, and he stayed there for the summers. And then a
pedophile.
Yeah.
A pornographer and a pedophile.
That's right.
Who swung both ways. Imagine him as the mentor to your teenage boy.
And by the way, as you know, since you seem to know about this, it's well documented. Davis is one of the head communists using sex crimes and sex infiltrators to try to infiltrate and take over the Democratic Party and black groups. He ran newspapers all over the country. He actually got direct orders from the Politburo. So the father of Obama was one of the highest level Soviet spies in this country for 30 years.
Right, and to me, it's hard not to think that we must be in some kind of an end time or fourth turning or whatever you want to call it, because to me, it's like the plot of Rosemary's Baby or one of these Damien movies. You know, you've got the baby of you know, the left Lucifer and the Islam Lucifer becoming president of the United States. If you submitted that as a screenplay to Hollywood, they would think it was outrageous, but it happened.
Who first said, you're a writer, who first said truth stranger than fiction? Because it is.
Absolutely. It's frequent that coincidences happen, and I say, oh, I could never put that in a book. It's just not believable. But they actually do happen.
I mean, they really are. Let me ask this question. I want to take a few phone calls and hand the show over to you. I want to play this clip from last week where you predicted the whole power plant thing, and they start rolling that out, and they're clearly beta testing it. Why? I don't get it. They conquered America, the globalists. They run it. Why then kill the prosperity, go after people, and wreck it all when they're in charge of it? It's crazy.
Well, it's like World War II when the Germans are knocking at the door of Moscow and Stalingrad. It looks like you're on the verge of complete victory and annihilation of your enemies, but really the wave has gone all the way up the beach as far as it's going to go. And from then on, it's on the way out. So the globalists are looking at Brexit and then Trump, and now a slew of elections coming up in Europe, and the globalists are going to be trounced. And we're now in the post-Moscow, post-Stalingrad phase of World War II, where they get beaten all the way back.
No, I agree. I use that analogy constantly because it's so true. They've put all their energy and everything in, and now, just like a wave going back, everything's reversing. And historically, as you know, these are 100-year waves. They've got 100 years of being backpedaling now, and they finally get it.
I think this is a grand super cycle. I think a Kondratiev cycle, which is, you know, enough generations that nobody remembers the last big, you know, Great Depression.
I agree. This is a mega quickening.
This is a millennial cycle. I think this would have to be considered a super cycle.
I agree. And the enemy, I mean, have you read all their writings of their own people? Because they think we're dumb and don't read, you know, editorials he puts out, Soros or Financial Times. They admit everything's destroyed. It's over. Oh, my God, they're going to hang us. Red alert. I mean, they are in panic mode right now.
And remember, they do believe that they have parachutes. This makes them very dangerous because they personally think that no matter what happens, they can jump on their Gulfstream and fly to Patagonia or to New Zealand or one of the other places where they have an estate with 5 years worth of generator power.
They have armored redoubts.
Yeah, so they think that no matter what, they get away. So that makes them dangerous in a sense that, you know, a family man, nobody living in a city or the suburbs actually wants to see the grid go down, chaos and cannibalism.
But the elites hate the public, and they even talk about it and get off on it. But here's what they don't get. Literally, the most hardcore group, most patriotic, most anti-New World Order is the soldiers, and the best of those are then the security people. I don't know of security people that don't hate every one of them and basically have a deck of cards wanting to kill them. Don't they get that as soon as they have this nuclear war scenario and they're in a bunker, that day one, the security guys are going to walk in and say, sorry, we're going to kill you right now, and by the way, your family right along with you. I mean, I'm sorry.
Well, and it's not only the active duty and the actively employed security guys. I would say everybody from approximately the Vietnam, just in terms of age, everybody from the Vietnam generation on.
When they have nothing to lose, don't these globalists realize that they're going to have like 10 million soldiers coming after them?
Well, it's even more than that because, you know, we've been world leaders at training guerrillas. I mean, the Special Forces mission, you know, the Green Berets, the Army Special Forces, their bread and butter mission is to go into a place
force multiply
and train guerrillas. Well, you take one Green Beret. I don't care if he's 60 or if he's 26. You take one Green Beret and a Boy Scout troop, and in a month, you've got a guerrilla platoon. So it's much more than the individual former Spec Ops guy or infantry, or airborne, ranger.
No, I agree, but Marines. I'm saying the very security of all these people literally hate their guts.
Including the pilots. When they don't fly their own jets, with very few exceptions.
Oh, that's another point. I don't know a pilot that isn't.
Their pilots are all ex-Navy and Air Force. Their pilots might turn around and land them at a secure facility in Omaha instead of flying to Patagonia. something they might want to think about.
And by the way, Matt Bracken, we're not just saying this to feel good. I mean, we're really telling the truth right now. So that's why it's important. I mean, when I hear the way Soros and Hillary treat their security people, I mean, they treat them like, it's even on top of it, they treat them like filth. They have no idea what's going to happen to them.
Well, it's not, when you say security, I'm thinking military, ex-military, former military.
No, that's who they have. Yeah, no, sure. It's like Blackwater type people.
Right. And, you know, in Benghazi, the 13 hours thing, you know, the SEAL community counts the former SEAL as a SEAL. He's not, you know, a guy who just used to be a SEAL. He's considered a SEAL doing his duty. Now he's working for the CIA, or he might be working private security for the State Department, what have you. But these guys, former and active, they still have that military ethos, and they do take their oath very seriously, the oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So this goes doubly for the pilots. You know, you don't just come out of Embry-Riddle flight school and go fly Gulfstreams for George Soros. You know, the guy that is flying for George Soros might hate his guts. He might be an ex-Air Force guy. And when it comes time to fly him to Patagonia, the plane might land inside of Area 51, you know, surrounded by, you know, white Air Force pickup trucks. So it's something that these people that have a Gulfstream escape plan should really think about, the loyalty of their pilots when they get in that airplane.
By the way, we're not just saying this. That's why, I mean, we just kicked their ass all over the world in the last year. Don't they get that the move is happening? This is the counteroffensive. We're winning every battle, and they think they're going to double down against us and beat us. I agree we're going to beat them. I just hope they don't start a nuclear war in the process, Matt.
That's right. But I'm heartened by this Washington Post article, because it's such a false note. It's a puny. It's like a little counterattack. You know, even in the spring of '45, you know, after the Battle of the Bulge, you know, in the Hurtgen Forest and all of it, the Germans were still capable of launching small counterattacks. Back in the bunker, Hitler's thinking that these were actually going to work. You know, the German generals didn't think they were going to work. They were just going to, okay, well, that's, you know, the Americans have left us an opening, we'll attack. But this pitiful little Washington Post grid down scenario story is such an obvious fake news story. It was debunked so quickly. Now they've, just like with my story about the shooting into the stadium, my first novel, they've taken grid down off of their playbook. It wouldn't work now. It's too, you know, and
you just said it. That's why we're harping on it, Matt, is to take it off the table.
That's right. We take it off the table. Nobody would believe it. They'd say Putin, and we'd say Obama and Soros.
But that's why the listeners still have to get this out. We've got to point out that Drudge carried our article, gets a lot of the credit. It's not about credit. We need to know the conduits we've got. Within 24 hours, it was all over the news that it was fake. And it was MSM saying, Washington Post, you're fake. I love seeing them eat their own, which shows a lot of MSM's getting it. Hey, we're betting on the wrong team. How long until that metric hits and we see an almost total conversion of their own people?
I don't know. I think we've seen a few, but I mean, you know, Politico still has Glenn Thrush. He's still going on NPR as an expert.
Sure, but Politico came out and said it was fake the next day too. That's one of them. You know.
But I mean, but people like Glenn Thrush, who said in his own emails, his Podesta emails, I'm a hack. Right.
He's been promoted to the New York Times.
Right, but he's still going on NPR and PBS as an expert. So, I mean, without admitting that he already admitted he was a hack and a propagandist. So I don't see many of them, much house cleaning going on.
All right, Matt, stay there. I'm going to come back and go to a few calls in the short segment and hand the reins to you, Matt Bracken. EnemiesForeignDomestic.com is our guest. I'm Alex Jones with InfoWars.com. I skip breaks, you name it. We need your support. We are doing store-wide free shipping, and it's going to end Wednesday because we have to. We've sold out of most of the nutraceuticals, most of the supplements. We're almost sold out of the Trump is my president red shirt. We've got the Hillary for President 2017 shirt. DNA Force has been sold out. It's like 10 of our products are sold out that are nutraceuticals. We've got Brain Force with 20% more each bottle, 33% off and free shipping. Additional 10% off with promo code. Well, there's a bunch of promo codes. Additional 10% off. They're on the side when you sign up for auto ship. Whether it's Super Male Vitality or Brain Force, it's your purchase, financing, and funding this operation. So I want to thank you all for your support. I agree with Matt. We're having huge victories. I think it is a mega turn. I mean, I think it's one of the fourth turnings. We've broken that down. I think he's dead on. But for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. That isn't just one way towards us. The enemy knows this and is exerting every crazy power they've got to try to derail this, including, I believe, false flags with nukes, you name it. That's why, at the end of the day, it's got to be people in the government at point-blank range. If they get orders or see autonomous stuff going out, you're going to have to do whatever it takes to stop this for the good of this country and this world. So I'm just saying, not just the next 17 days, I'd say the next few months is the most critical time in world history, quite frankly. We're living it right now. Matt Bracken?
Yeah, and even when we're winning, it might be the most dangerous time. You know, that's when somebody might pull their own personal doomsday device. You know, there might be their what the hell moment. You know, for a George Soros. Aside from a great
I agree.
attack,
if you don't think that guy doesn't have bioweapons and nerve gas, I mean, he's a James Bond villain.
but I don't think that he needs bioweapons and nerve gas. I think that he could economic, yeah, because if you crash the global economic system, all of our major cities, any city of more than 1 million people, I mean, and probably most cities over 100,000.
How dare you say someone who admits he loves crashing economies and starving people, how dare you say he might do that?
Well, I go back to my, Dr. Evil Mount Rushmore. If you know you're not going to see the next presidential election, let's say, you've been to Switzerland, you're getting total blood transfusions every week, you're eating fetuses for breakfast, whatever you're doing to extend your life, and the doctors are saying, you've got a year to go, Mr. Soros, then in that case, he might say, all right, I'm going to crash the global economy. If that happens, if the ATM system, if the credit cards don't work, if the ATMs go down,
I agree.
If the electronic benefit transfer system crashes, our cities will be burning inside of a week.
So here's my final point. I'm not a guy that calls for, violent action, but he's a clear and present danger. He's outlived his shelf life. What do we do then? Do we just sit here and wait for him to do it?
Probably. I think he's very smart, and I don't think he's anywhere that somebody can take him out. He may, in fact, even have some kind of a dead man switch hooked up to the economy, where
I think that's my next question. Why are they leaving him alone? He's the #1 enemy. What has he got?
He might have a dead man switch, like a terrorist with the like in Speed. You've got the dead man release button. If anything unfortunate happens to me, then the world economy crashes. Everybody sees gibberish on their computer screens. Then the lights go out, the cities burn.
Well, let me back you up on that. Globalists, every time the EU is about to fall or they go, do what we say or war. People always say, what do you mean? They'll start major wars. They're threatening that now. I think the dead man switch isn't just economic, man. I think it's war.
It can very well be. I don't think that at this point any naval commander would obey an order, say, to launch Tomahawks at Israel. They wouldn't. Or Syria. I think that there must be a lot of private conversations happening in wardrooms and in Air Force. Same situation. I don't even know what they call a wardroom in the Air Force. But what would we do if we were ordered to do something crazy at this point?
Sure, command and control centers. Command and control centers, SAC bases.
The National Command Authority. But the thing is, we might never know if it was George Soros. It could have actually just happened on its own. Just math alone, just mathematics tells us that we're in an unsustainable. Sure,
we're out of time. I'm going to hand the baton to you. I'm sorry to Andy. Andy, you say you're a writer? I'm going to give you our email. Maybe write articles for us, and I'll have you back on. Other callers, sorry to get to you all. Matt Bracken's taking over the rest of the show.
I'd like to just talk a little bit about my own theory, my own worst case. Sort of my nickname around this house is worst case scenario. Because I truly believe that we're in a very dangerous time, and I'm not so concerned necessarily about any particular scenario, what triggers this, but the outcome, any outcome severe enough that takes down our electrical grid could lead to an end of civilization. And I'm not saying that as hyperbole. You've seen the anger in cities like Baltimore and Ferguson. That's when the electricity is actually functioning, the water is coming out of the taps, ATMs are spitting out dollars, the EBT cards are working, and McDonald's is open. If you take away all of them in cities of 1 million, 5 million, 10 million, in America and around the world, there will be absolute chaos. We've built our cities into being the equivalent of a giant beehive. It's all great while it's functioning, but if somebody walks up and whacks the beehive, the bees come pouring out and there's no way to put it back together, there's going to be in that case, at least for the bees, a massive die-off. You don't want to be near the beehive when that happens. I hope it never happens. I hope we go onward and upward forever, for decades and centuries, greater and greater technology, inhabiting the planets. But I have a sneaking suspicion that the pendulum has gone about as far as it's going to go in the direction of turning man into virtually a god, all-knowing, able to play with the genetic code, determine what kind of babies we're going to have or not have. I think that in the end, the natural law, or if you prefer, God is going to have the last laugh. And when the pendulum comes back, it's going to come back very hard. The reason for that is we've never in human history had a situation where millions of people have been fed from thousands of miles away, and the food and the water, everything that comes into the city has to be brought by a functioning modern infrastructure. Anything breaks the infrastructure and the city can't exist. It can't survive. Where will the people go? There's no food out in the suburbs. A week after the cities are out of food, so the suburbs will be out a week after that. Then what? Our food comes from giant agribusiness farms that require diesel fuel and fertilizer and chemicals to get that food to the trains and the trucks, to the production centers, and to our supermarkets. Any of that fails, and we're going to be in a hunger situation very fast. Sometimes I think about Jamestown. One of their first winters, they had a starvation winter. These were very tough people. They were smart. They were a lot hardier than we ever would be. These were pilgrims. These were people that knew how to, skin animals and grow their own food. Half of them starved in one bad winter. Imagine a city today. How many of the people living in that city could survive for 2 months if the supermarkets were looted and burned? Not very many. So I always come back first to, what can you do to prevent that? Naturally, I would suggest buying, if you're going to buy prepper supplies, do it right here on InfoWars, because it's a great way to not only help yourself, but help the cause, so to speak. But I also always come back to water. Do you know where the water that's coming out of your tap and out of your shower, do you know where it comes from? How long would it last if the grid went down? There are backup generators that can run for a few days. Most of our backup system is only meant to function, say, during an ice storm or after a hurricane for a few days or a week. Then here comes FEMA. If a big part of the country or the entire country had a grid collapse, then what? Who's going to come to save you? Nobody. The only people that are going to be coming are going to be people that are even hungrier and more desperate than you are, and they're going to be looking for your food. So the first thing I like to ask people is, do you know where your water comes from and how long would it last? Is it feasible to get on a well that doesn't require grid electricity to pull the water up? And I'm afraid that most people, probably 80 or 90%, would have to answer, if the city water goes down, my tap goes dry. There's nothing I can do about it. And we've seen this over and over again in history, where due to a prolonged drought at the end of a civilization's building cycle, say the Pueblo dwelling Indians in the Southwest, they built big cities, chopped down all the trees, then you get a big drought, the city dies. You come back a few centuries later, nobody's there. You could speed that up by orders of magnitude for a modern city, because of the social cohesion that would absolutely break down. You'd have anarchy, looting, rioting, murder, and probably within a few weeks, cannibalism. And it's a real cheerful way to begin the new year. But I believe in, not sugarcoating it. I don't think that there's ever been a time in history when we've been more vulnerable. And the only answer to what I'm saying is, but Matt, the grid could never collapse. The economic system could never collapse. Really smart people are working on it. Really the best minds are on top of this. I don't believe that they are. I think that we're on like a rickety bridge with the supports breaking underneath. I hope I'm wrong. I would like nothing better than in 10 years, everybody laughs at me and holds my books up and mocks me, because then I'd be a happy guy. I'd be out on a sailboat, or with grandchildren by then, maybe living in a great country, and I'll take all the laughter and all the ribbing in good humor. I want to be wrong about this, is what I'm saying. I don't want to be right. But these next few weeks before the inauguration, we might finally put to the test, will George Soros and Obama go off into the sunset? Or will they, pull their doomsday switch that if I can't run the world, nobody can? Because I think that these are people that are that evil that they would actually do it. Now, they might think that they can calibrate the punishment to just punish America to a certain degree. My fear is that any kind of a attack against the financial system will spill over to the electrical grid and to the internet, almost like three different body systems, like say the nervous system, the blood circulation system, the skeletal muscular system. You can't live just with one of them removed. The others go down if any of them go down. If the financial system goes down, people aren't being paid, they won't go to work, the power plant shuts down. If the internet goes down, the infrastructure is probably going to go down too very soon after that. So I'm just saying, the people that might have an interest in seeing the house burn down before Trump is inaugurated, or even during his term, even if they think they would just be giving us a mild beating, it still might cascade into an unstoppable crisis. And I just like to tell everybody, if you can, instead of buying another AR-15, buy another couple months worth of food, and if you can, get enough water to last for a long time. Because in some scenarios, 3 months of food wouldn't even be enough. But it's like surviving on a life raft. Maybe 3 months of food is enough if you reach an island in 2 months. So you never can say I can't have enough food to last forever, so I might as well have no survival food. A couple of months might mean that by the time you need to go out foraging for food, most of the idiots have already been killed off. Most of the dangerous criminals have already been shot down. So you don't have to, engage in those running street battles. But in the meantime, I would suggest strongly survival food, survival purification systems, and survival water, because you don't know when it's going to happen. And when it happens, it's going to be too late to go out and buy it then. I'm not really aware of what the clock is doing in terms of my going right over.
You're going to break here in about 2 minutes, Matt.
Okay. Well, I've got a ad to read, if you don't mind.
Well, you can do it later. Hey, I'm enjoying hearing you talk. I'm sitting there eating my lunch, and I got all these piles of work to do watching you. So it's good to hear you. You want to break about 3 minutes, then you come back with a 6-minute segment, then an 18-minute segment. Again, we'll email you all that. I thought we had done that. But just, you don't have to worry about plugging stuff. Sure, we got free shipping for a couple more days, and that helps finance things. And we've got a lot of great vitamins and stuff people need and good storable foods. But it's all, I got to tell you this, Matt. I've personally been looking to get out the country myself and get ready, and because I really know that's where this is going. I'd give it about a 50% chance we'll be in a depression. Maybe Americanism versus globalism can restart the global economy, but I don't know. The globalists were planning this takedown, and they had admitted that. Now, because of prosperity coming back, maybe it won't happen. But we know this. There's a very good chance that we're going into a depressionary spiral.
And some of the best people to know, I would say, if you have some friends in your social circle, ham radio operators, people that know how to communicate, further than VHF. Anybody, and I don't care if he's a 90-year-old, anybody that can communicate, beyond line of sight, beyond VHF, he's going to be a most valuable player. And so is the guy with a light plane. Anybody with a single or a light twin that can land on a road might be the guy that gets your family out of a bad place, because forget about the Winnebago getting across the bridge. It's just not going to happen. If your doomsday escape device is a Winnebago hauling a trailer loaded with MREs, just stay at home and eat them there, because you're just going to wind up on the Beltway stuck in gridlock. But on the other hand, if you have a friend with a Cessna, that's the guy that's going to be a real hero. As long as you can fuel up that airplane, it's going to be able to take you anywhere you need to go. And there's nobody that can stop it. Nobody.
All right, Matt, we're going to break. Back in 4 minutes in a short segment and a long segment. I'm Alex Jones. Hey, interrupting when I'm needed.
Now, being that I'm a writer, I'd like to advise people that think, you know, Matt Bracken, he seems pretty interesting, even if he's pretty far out there. Has he ever written about this? Well, that's what I do for a living. And some of my stuff that I've written in the last few years, if you want to really know what I'm thinking is going on, you can find it on my website, Enemies, Foreign and Domestic. On my, I have a page full of links to my short stories. And probably the one that I would recommend, if anybody reads anything of mine, is a short story called Alas, Brave New Babylon. And this is what I would consider a worst case scenario, with the grid going down. People don't even know why, and there are very few survivors. If this really is a grand super cycle event, we're talking, you know, 1,000-year cycle, wheels within wheels, all coming at the same time together. We're going to see something possibly a lot worse than the 30 Years' War in Europe, or, you know, possibly even the World Wars, because it's possible that there will be very few people that are unscathed. I don't see how the contagion could be stopped from going around the world if the grid goes down. Trade will stop, water will stop flowing, electricity will stop flowing, and it's going to be really a brave new world. And anyway, that's on that same page. I've got short stories and essays linked that I've been writing for the last couple of years. I've almost got another novel ready to go, but yeah, I've almost got another novel. I don't have any of these controls here, so I'm just doing it with the Austin studio helping me out here. But all of my most current thinking is pretty much on them, and of course on my novels. In my novels, Enemies, Foreign and Domestic, the trilogy, and other standalone works. But yeah, I think that this is a very dangerous time for our country, because the people that have dedicated their entire lives, multi generations of lives. You think about Obama being the offspring of Frank Marshall Davis, people like that. We're talking, you know, sometimes 3 and 4 generations of communists. Now they call themselves progressives, which is just rebranding of the exact same thing. They're not going to see their Waterloo and just walk away. They're not just going to pick up their marbles and go home. I believe that they think that if they can't rule, then they're going to will inherit ruins. And my fear is that we won't be able to stop a cascade from happening. And no matter if it's Trump as president or Hillary, frankly, the worst effects will be not stoppable by any human. Just as, you know, you can't, you know, King Canute can't just hold back the tide just because he wills it and he wishes and demands it. The levers of power just won't exist. If the grid collapses, basically we're screwed. Anyway, I usually like to talk to Alex about this because we go back and forth. Now I've got my chance to talk, and I'm floundering around here. I'm so sorry. They told me that they cleared the boards of phone calls. That was going to be my next go-to. But yeah, I've written some stuff that's pretty provocative. Another place that I write for pretty frequently is called Gates of Vienna, which is a counter-jihad website. The most recent thing that I wrote for them is called Piss Koran, which is a short story about basically an old construction worker going up on a crane in New York with a Koran and a bucket. And if the Serrano exhibit at the museum across the street is going to open, then he's going to make his own art called the Piss Koran. And it's basically an allegory for exploring the massive hypocrisy and double standard, where we're just supposed to take anything that's coming out of Islam. It's their way, just accept it. Women are beaten, who cares? Women are forced to cover up, doesn't matter. That's their culture. But God forbid you should say one thing about a crucifix being dunked in urine. Then you're a bigot. You don't appreciate good art. So that's one of the last major short stories that I wrote. These things are all free to read on Gates of Vienna, Western Rifle Shooters, other places. The links are all on my links page on my website, as well as my books, of course. But yeah, Take Two, that's probably, that's had a lot of reads. Another one that's not on Gates of Vienna is called When the Music Stops, How America's Cities May Explode in Violence. That's also been read tens of thousands of times. It's really hard not to start wondering about end times when you consider the location of Israel, the history of the Jews returning to their ancestral homelands, making a nation state, and now the entire world basically ganging up against them as if they're the malignant cancer on the entire world. I think I saw where in the last year there have been 20 UN resolutions against Israel, one against North Korea, one against Syria, one against Iran. It's pretty apparent that we've gone through the looking glass, and the UN is now basically team evil. On the UN Human Rights Commission are all of the worst countries in the world, Saudi Arabia, terrorist states. They absolutely have no interest in what we consider human rights. And when you think about the confluence of events with the inauguration coming up, Netanyahu's house being raided, this UN resolution, you have to wonder if somebody's going to go rogue. Some F-16 pilot's going to plant a bomb, an iron bomb, or maybe a guided bomb right in the middle of the Dome of the Rock. It's the kind of days where you just wonder, what would be too outrageous? Almost nothing at this point. Every morning when I wake up, I turn on, first I see, yeah, the clock is still working, so I've still got the grid. I turn on the TV, and if they're still talking about what they were talking about yesterday, I say, great, we made it through another night. Because morning by morning, I won't be surprised to turn on the TV, just like we did in 2001 with 9/11. I won't be surprised if we turn on the TV and we see an aircraft carrier on fire in the Straits of Hormuz, or some other military calamity on that level. Is we have been walking right up to the line, tiptoeing up to the line. A month ago, an American ship, sheep dipped, I think, for the Yemeni forces, whatever they are. One of those aluminum catamarans was hit from a land-based missile. Didn't quite sink it, but almost, virtually destroyed it. We're walking very close to where they're going to hit ships and our ships are going to hit back. And from there, it'd be a very easy walk to World War III. And with Obama doing this backstab on Israel last week, at this point, I wonder what other tricks does he have up his sleeve? Is he going to do something to literally set the house on fire before he leaves? Or does he just want to leave Trump in a checkmate situation in the corner, where he can hardly move without creating a greater disaster? That's what happens when you elect a traitor mole as your president. A slick con man who's been having the doors opened in front of him from the time that he was an adolescent, with some kind of what I would consider a red net, sort of the old boys network of lefty progressive communists that have been greasing the skids for Obama since he was a child. Here he is. It's his swan song. 3 weeks to go. All of his legacy, his executive orders, they're going to be swept away. Is he going to just go away like that, set up another action committee, or is he going to do something to really set the thing on fire before he goes? I have to wonder. And with the events in Israel, it almost feels like there's a bullseye being painted, somewhere on Jerusalem. I wouldn't be surprised if the next big explosion or terror events in Jerusalem, and I wouldn't be surprised if something really paradigm changing, like on the level of somebody blowing up the Dome of the Rock, to just kick this thing right into high gear. I don't know about you, but I'm glad I have a well in the backyard that has a hand pump on it. It doesn't require electricity. At least I know I'm going to be drinking water no matter what. And that's something I would consider. I would strongly consider, if it's in your capability to do so, have a lot of water on hand. These aren't normal times. They say that the Jews in Germany, right through the 20s and 30s, where they were like the frogs in the pot being boiled. They thought at every step there would be some outside force would stop the madness and save them. You know, it would be Bismarck would get rid of this Hitler. Bismarck would stop him, or the honorable generals of the Wehrmacht. They would step in and stop him. But it was just a slide where at each turn the water got hotter and the exit doors got nailed shut one at a time. And I feel like we're almost in a situation similar to that, where events, instead of, you know, a Hitler per se, but just world events just seem to be tumbling like dice that won't stop, just turning and turning and turning. And I just have the feeling that it's going to end on a real bad number. And I hope I'm wrong. I mean, I say all the time, I hope I'm, you know, just a guy who's got some too far out theories and doesn't understand how inherently stable the world situation really is, and that there are very smart people out there that are way ahead of any trouble. But in my gut, I don't feel like that's true. And over again in history, the normalcy bias has done people in. They've thought things are great. Things could never change from here. But the world is full of abandoned cities that were once flourishing, and something changed and the cities collapsed. It's not usually a slow event when a city collapses. It's like the fall of Phnom Penh when the Khmer Rouge came in. They're emptied out. They just become a ghost town very quickly. You take the water and the electronic infrastructure out of a modern city, it can't exist. Where will those people go? So I encourage people to read my short stuff, my novels, of course, but my short stuff like Alas, Brave New Babylon. If you want to get an idea of, you know, what goes on between my ears, maybe you don't want to. It's might be a pretty scary place. But a lot of people have read these things. I should be on my 6th or 7th novel by now, but the last few years under Obama, I felt like it was more important to put out free short work than to focus on my next novel. I do have another novel that's almost finished. It's about 90% finished. It should be done in a month or so. But that's for another show. We'll talk about that. But yeah, these are definitely interesting times. I feel like we're living in history, like we're sitting on the, you know, in the front row of the theater, and we're about to watch, you know, Abe get shot up there, and here comes somebody swinging down onto the stage. I mean, we have front row seats. As long as the electricity holds out, we'll at least see. It might be fake news. It might be doctored somewhat, but we're going to know when it's really happening. And I think it's going to be like something that's never been seen before in history, because all of the other societal and civilizational collapses that happened, they didn't happen in societies that were dependent on electricity to keep the food fresh. You know, these were all societies where food was larded and stored in you know, cisterns and grain warehouses. So when, you know, war swept through, that just meant you lost a planting cycle. The food was grown in the next county over, maybe 2 counties away. But in our case, the food is now grown 1,000 miles away. I often, you know, ask the rhetorical question, how much food do they grow in your zip code? And honestly, how much food do they grow in your telephone area code? Because if the infrastructure, if the grid collapses, the only food you're going to get, maybe for years, is food that is grown within a horse's ability to carry a wagon. I'm serious. All of our magic tricks, all of our technological magic tricks, they require all of the other tricks to be working in perfect synchronization. It's like a Swiss watch. If you take the most expensive $6,000 self-winding, you know, Rolex Oyster Submariner Pro, and you stab a ice pick right through it, you've only damaged a few pieces, but the whole watch comes completely to a stop. And that's sort of an analogy for our modern civilizational infrastructure. If the banking system fails, if the EBT system is hacked, if our electrical grid is hacked or corrupted, it's going to be very hard to self-repair before our societies, our cities just explode, burn, and self-immolate. I mean, we've already seen the lack of social cohesion in good times. What will happen when I see these, people rioting over TVs on Christmas Eve, fighting each other, going to fights, looking forward to going to fights, using social media to get to fights? I think, how will these people act when they're in the dark, hungry, and nothing is coming out of the water tap? What are they going to be capable of doing if they already are acting violently just for fun with the entire system working? So I'm very I'm very concerned about the future, obviously, as you can see. But what can you do? You can prepare. You can have water purification systems, survivor food. Try to learn how to grow. Move away from the cities if you can. If at all possible, don't live in a high-rise building. Those are the worst death traps of all. Imagine your building with no electricity. If you would have to haul water up flights of stairs, forget it. It's not survivable. It's not sustainable. So I just encourage people to, possibly even think about what would happen if, if your oil or your electric heat went out, your furnace is cold. Do you live in a place where everything just will freeze like the old trapper in Jeremiah Johnson? It doesn't matter if you're inside of a building. In Sarajevo, during the winter, and Sarajevo is probably no colder than, say, Ohio. In Sarajevo, they were first burning their furniture right inside of the apartments, then tearing apart their door frames and tearing apart anything they could to burn. They cut down all the trees in the city to burn. And that was just in, an average city comparable to some city in Ohio or Indiana. So what happens? I'm sorry? Yeah. Yeah, so we're going to kick to a report in a little bit, and we'll see where this all ends. I hope that I'm still broadcasting and writing years from now, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if something happens in the meantime to upset the entire apple cart.
She wants to help me.
No, you've got to be sent for reprogramming. Hillary,
Not reprogramming.
All right.
No, Hillary. Hillary, save me, Mommy. Russian scum.
I never get tired of those clips. Never. This is the season of Schadenfreude. I hope it lasts, and I hope that this is the second coming of Trump. Thanks for the opportunity to have me on today. My first shot at this. Thanks, Alex. It gives me a great appreciation for your ability to go straight through like that. Anybody that wants to know more about me, I'm Matt Bracken. My website is enemiesforeignanddomestic.com. You can read all about my stuff, my books, my short stories, my essays there. And I'll tell you what, Ann Coulter, you get the Guts Award. You were the only one that took those laughs face to face. It must have hurt, and along with the roast where they called you the vile things. But you've got my respect forever.